Over the next 40 years, farmers will be feeding 70% more people than they do today. You may ask how they'll be able to accomplish this daunting task, but the answer is genetically modified organisms, most commonly known as GMOs. Today, I plan on informing you about these genetically modified organisms. We'll look at their history, how they affect our daily lives, and the future that they hold in American agriculture. Today, I live in a very rural and agriculturally centered environment, but I plan on conveying only the truth to my audience about these genetically modified organisms. Genetically modified organisms have a very short but impactful history. Genetically modified organisms began to approach the world in 1994 when the FDA approved the first produce item to enter the shelves of grocery stores. It was a delayed ripening tomato. This was revolutionary because before this, produce could only stay on the shelves for a very limited amount of time before it was rotting. The next groundbreaking improvement created by GMOs was a superweed. This genetically modified weed was able to resist glyphosate 11 times better than a standard weed. This is so much more than a standard weed. It was able to resist it so much more than you would see in any other type of environment. Lastly, in 1999, over 100 million acres were planted with genetically engineered seeds. This was amazing. This was so much more, almost 100 times more than was seen in the 70s or even the 80s. After looking at the genetically modified organisms' history, let us look at what all they are used for in our daily lives. Some of what we come into contact every day has been genetically modified. Genetically modified organisms are used in multiple kinds of medicines, such as vaccines, antivenoms, and allergens. Allergens and vaccines are in us every day. Vaccines are given at schools, and allergens are given to children who struggle with allergies. This is extremely important for people who are allergic to things such as peanut oil and grass. Secondly, animals and livestock are also subjected to being genetically modified. Some animals genetically engineered include goats, salmon, cows, chickens, and rabbits. Chickens and cows are used in our everyday lives through chicken nuggets, hamburgers, and steaks. These are things that we put into our body every day and that we eat without even thinking about it. But if they weren't genetically modified, we wouldn't be able to eat them on the scale that we do today. Lastly, our crops and produce are also susceptible to being genetically modified. Multiple crops such as cotton, corn, alfalfa, and canola are very common GMO plants. Corn is something that we eat very regularly where I live, and it's something that without being genetically modified, we certainly wouldn't have on the scale that we have today. So this new way of farming has made a huge impact so far, but let's look at its future. How will GMOs continue to impact us in the future? Well, the GMO industry will continue to grow according to environmentalscience.org. Biotechnology is a growing industry, a relatively new science that is expected to grow in importance over the coming decades as we find ways to improve food yield. Food yield is something that has become such a huge topic. We need more and more food as more and more people are born and created. This is so important to feeding the world and making sure that there is no more starvation. We will continue to acquire information about how crops respond to environmental stress. Environmental stress is extremely important because sometimes they can't handle floods or droughts, and if we can make them more environmentally strong, then they will be able to become less dependent on things such as this. Lastly, we'll be able to increase our knowledge about these plants to allow us to grow in more hospital environments around the country. This would mean that we would be able to grow crops in third world countries such as Africa. This would be amazing because they would be able to sustain themselves through crops instead of having to depend on other nations. Overall, genetically modified organisms are present in almost every aspect of our life. They affect most of what we eat and take into our body every day. Today, we've learned about how GMOs are present in and affect our lives. We looked at the history, their uses, and their future in developing a revolutionary way to farm and develop products. Here's something to consider the next time you go to the grocery store. GMOs are taking over the industry are in most of every product you can buy. If you think they do not affect you, you're sadly mistaken. These innovative crops and medicines are probably already in your cabinets at home.